the boy noticed something that made no sense to him at first. The men most terrified of losing money were almost never the men with the least of it. He had assumed fear would follow poverty, that the man with nothing would be the most afraid because he had the most to lose in losing even a little. But that was not what he saw. He saw men with full chests and comfortable lives lying awake at night, clutching what they had, flinching at every rumor in the market. And he saw men with almost nothing who moved through the world strangely unafraid. The fear, he realized, was not attached to how much a man had. It was attached to something inside him. And that fear, wherever it lived, was doing more damage than any actual loss ever could. Because the boy watched what fear did to a man's decisions, and it was always the same. The man ruled by the fear of losing grabbed at every coin and held it too tightly to ever let it grow. He refused every risk, even the wise ones. And so he stood still while the world moved past him. When the market trembled, he sold everything in a panic at the worst possible moment, locking in the very loss he was so afraid of. And worst of all, he never began anything, because beginning meant the possibility of failing. And failing was the one thing he could not bear to imagine. His fear did not protect his money. It quietly strangled it. This was the thing the boy came to understand, and it reshaped how he saw wealth entirely. The fear of losing money causes far more ruin than losing money ever does. The loss itself is a single event. It happens, it hurts, and it passes. But the fear is constant. It sits with a man every day whispering, shrinking his choices, making him grasp when he should open his hand and flee when he should stand still. A man can recover from a loss in a season. He can spend his entire life imprisoned by the fear of one. And here, the boy saw the cruelest part of it. A man ruled by the fear of losing money can never truly be free. No matter how much he accumulates, he may gather a great fortune, and still the fear will follow him, because the fear was never really about the amount. The more he has, the more he has to lose, and so the fear grows alongside the fortune instead of shrinking. He builds a larger and larger house, and the fear simply moves into it with him. Wealth, for such a man, is not freedom. It is a heavier thing to guard. So the boy set out to understand how a man might escape this. Not by never losing, which no one can promise, but by ceasing to be governed by the fear of it. Because he saw a few men who had reached that place. They were not reckless, and they were not indifferent to money, but they had somehow removed its power to terrify them, and because of that, they made clear decisions where other men made panicked ones. They could hold, wait, risk, and begin, all with a steady hand, because the fear was not standing behind them with a knife. That freedom, the boy learned, is not a gift some men are born with. It is built deliberately in a series of steps any man can climb, and it begins with understanding what this fear actually is. Because almost everyone misunderstands it completely. The boy began by asking a question almost no one asks. Where does this fear even come from? Because a thing you do not understand rules you, and a thing you understand loses much of its power over you. And what he found surprised him. The fear of losing was not a flaw, not a weakness of character, not something shameful in a man. It was an instinct, old, deep, and once entirely wise. For most of human history, to lose was to die. To lose your food was to starve. To lose your shelter was to freeze. To lose your standing in the group was to be cast out into the dark. The mind that survived was the mind that guarded fiercely against loss, that treated every threat of losing as a threat to life itself. That fear kept your ancestors alive. You carry it because the fearful ones lived long enough to pass it down. But here was the trap the boy uncovered. That ancient instinct, so useful when a loss meant death, is almost perfectly wrong when applied to money. Because losing a coin is not losing your life. Losing a venture is not starving in the snow. The mind treats a financial loss with the same screaming alarm it once reserved for a lion in the grass. and so it makes you flee, freeze, and grab exactly as if your survival were at stake, when in truth your survival is not remotely at stake at all. The fear is real. The danger it is reacting to no longer exists. You are running from a lion that is only a shadow on the wall. This alone, the boy realized, changes something. When you feel the grip of that fear over money, you can name it for what it is: an old survival instinct, firing at the wrong target. It is not wisdom speaking. It is not caution. It is a very old alarm, built for a danger you are not actually in, and an alarm you understand is an alarm you can choose not to obey. But then the boy saw something darker, and far more important. That fear does not only mislead you from the inside, it is the exact lever by which other men control you from the outside. He watched how the powerful of Florence moved lesser men, and it was always the same mechanism. They did not persuade with reason. They reached for the fear of loss, and they pulled it. Take this bad deal or lose everything. Accept these terms, or you will have nothing. Act now, before it is too late. Every manipulation, every trap, every unfair bargain the boy ever saw was built on the same foundation. Make the man afraid of losing, and he becomes soft, pliable, easy to steer. A frightened man does not think. He grasps at whatever seems to offer safety, and the one who frightened him is always standing there, holding out exactly that, for a price. And so, the boy understood the true stakes. As long as you fear losing money, you hand a rope to every person who notices that fear. The moment they see it in you, and they will see it, they own a lever they can pull whenever they wish. To conquer the fear of loss is not only to sleep better, it is to remove the single handle by which the whole world reaches out to move you against your own interest. The fear, then, is an old instinct aimed at the wrong danger, and a rope you hand to others. But understanding it is not enough, because even understood, the fear still lies to you in 3 specific ways. The boy discovered that fear is not an honest counselor. It does not show you the truth of your situation and let you decide. It shouts, it distorts, and it lies. And it tells the same 3 lies to every man in every age. Once he learned to hear them, the fear began to lose its grip, because a lie you can name is a lie you can refuse. The first lie is this: the loss is almost certain to happen. Fear takes a possibility and dresses it as a near certainty. The boy watched a merchant so terrified of a particular ruin that he reorganized his entire life around avoiding it. And the ruin never came, was never even close to coming. He had suffered the loss 1,000 times in his mind, paying its full price again and again, for a thing that happened exactly 0 times in the world. This is what fear does. It takes something that might occur, perhaps rarely, and makes it feel as though it is already at the door. Most of what men fear losing, they never lose. But the fear collects its tax anyway, every single day, on losses that never arrive. The second lie is, if it happens, it will be total. Fear does not show you a loss. It shows you the end of everything. When a man imagines losing money, his mind does not picture the actual, limited event. A setback, a bad season, a sum gone. It leaps straight to complete destruction, ruin, disgrace, the street, the end. The boy noticed that men rarely feared the true size of a loss. They feared a monstrous, exaggerated version their own mind had painted. And a man will do almost anything, except almost any bad bargain, to avoid a catastrophe. Even a catastrophe that exists only in his imagination and bears no resemblance to what would actually occur. The third lie is the quietest and the most damaging. You would not survive it. Beneath the other 2 sits this final whisper, that the loss, if it came, would be the end of you. That you could not recover, could not rebuild, could not go on. And this is almost always false. The boy looked at men who had actually suffered the losses others so feared, and found that nearly all of them were still standing. They had lost and grieved. And then, this was the part the fear never mentions, they had continued. They rebuilt. Some rose higher than before. The loss that fear had painted as the end of the story turned out to be a single hard chapter in the middle of it. And here, the boy understood the strategy. You do not fight fear with courage, shouting at it to be silent. You fight it with truth, by dragging each lie into the light and asking it plainly, is this loss truly certain, or merely possible? If it came, would it truly be total, or actually limited? And if the worst happened, would I truly not survive? Or would I, like nearly everyone, endure it and go on? Ask fear these 3 questions, and it deflates. It cannot survive honest examination because it was never built on truth. It was built on speed and shadow, designed to move you before you could think. The man who learns to interrogate his fear this way is no longer its prisoner. When the cold grip arrives, he does not obey it. He questions it, watches it shrink under the questioning, and then decides with a clear mind. But there is a limit to what truth alone can do, because sometimes the loss is real and possible and would genuinely hurt. And for that, a man needs more than clear thinking. He needs a foundation. The boy was honest enough to admit what fear gets right. Sometimes the loss is real, sometimes it is possible, and it would genuinely hurt. And in those moments, no amount of clear thinking will fully calm a man, nor should it, because a fear pointing at a real danger is not a lie to be argued away. It is a warning to be answered. And you do not answer it with words. You answer it by building a foundation beneath your feet, so that even if the loss comes, it cannot take you down with it. This is where the boy found the true cure for fear, and it surprised him, because it was not in the mind at all. It was in how a man arranged his life. The men who feared loss least were not the bravest men he knew. They were the men who had made sure that no single loss could ever destroy them. Their calm was not courage, it was structure. The first stone in that foundation was simple. Never risk what you cannot afford to lose. The boy watched fearless men take bold risks again and again, but always with money whose loss, while unpleasant, would not touch the roof over their heads or the bread on their table. They never bet the essential on the uncertain. And because the essential was always safe, no single failure could reach it. They could lose a venture and sleep soundly, because losing it cost them a chapter, not the whole book. The man who risks only what he can afford to lose has already removed the teeth from failure before it ever arrives. The second stone was the reserve, a store held back quietly that stood between the man and disaster. The boy had seen how a reserve gives a man the power to say no, but it does something else, just as important. It makes loss survivable in advance. A man with something set aside knows in his bones that a bad season will not finish him. He has already prepared the ground on which he would stand if everything else fell. And a man who knows he can survive the loss simply does not fear it the way a man with no cushion does. The fear shrinks in exact proportion to the foundation beneath it. The third stone was never placing everything in one basket. The boy watched a man put his entire fortune into a single venture and then live in terror. Rightly so, because for him, one failure truly would be total. The lie fear tells, if it happens it will be total, becomes the truth when a man arranges his life foolishly. But the man who spreads what he has across several things has made that lie impossible. No single blow can end him, because no single thing holds everything. He has built his life so that the catastrophe fear keeps screaming about literally cannot occur. And here, the boy grasped something essential about courage itself. Courage without a foundation is not courage. It is recklessness, and it deserves the fear it pretends not to feel. The man who feels no fear while betting everything he owns on one throw is not brave. He is a fool who has not yet been punished. true fearlessness is earned. It is built by arranging your affairs so carefully that the loss, if it comes, is survivable. And only then does the absence of fear become wisdom rather than blindness. So, the deepest way to never fear losing money is to make losing money survivable on purpose before it ever happens. Build the foundation first, and the fear has nowhere left to stand. But even a man on solid ground must still change how he sees loss itself. And that is a shift in meaning, not structure. The boy had built the foundation. He understood the fear, he had exposed its lies, and he had arranged his life so that no single loss could destroy him. And yet he noticed that even men with all of this in place could still flinch at loss, because there remained one thing left to change, and it was not in the world or in the structure of their affairs. It was in the meaning they gave to the loss itself. He watched two men suffer nearly identical losses in the same year, and their two responses taught him everything. The first man treated his loss as a verdict. It meant he was a failure, that he had been foolish, that he was not meant for this, that the world had judged him and found him wanting. He carried the loss like a brand, and it made him smaller and more afraid than he had ever been. He never risked again, and so he never rose again. The loss had happened once, but he chose to keep losing it every day for the rest of his life. The second man treated the very same loss as a tuition. He looked at what it had cost him and asked plainly what it had taught him. And it had taught him a great deal, things he could have learned no other way. He paid the price, took the lesson, and walked forward carrying the knowledge instead of the shame. Within a few years, he had used what that loss taught him to build something the first man never could, precisely because he had been willing to be taught by his own failure rather than crushed by it. This was the reframe the boy understood was essential. To the fearful, a loss is a catastrophe and a judgment. To the wealthy mind, a loss is simply the cost of playing the game, the price of admission to any endeavor worth attempting. Because the boy looked closely at every man who had built something real and found not a single one who had done it without losing along the way. The losses were not the exceptions to their success. They were part of how the success was built. Each loss had carried information. This path does not work. This man cannot be trusted. This assumption was false. This risk was larger than it looked. A loss is not a verdict on your worth. It is a lesson on the world, delivered at a price. And the only true waste is to pay the price and refuse to take the lesson. The boy saw that this changes a man's entire relationship with loss. If a loss is a catastrophe, you will do anything to avoid it. And in avoiding it, you avoid the game entirely. And in avoiding the game, you guarantee you never win. But if a loss is tuition, expensive, unwelcome, but survivable and instructive, then you can afford to play. You can act, attempt, and risk, knowing that even your failures are buying you something, teaching you the terrain, making you more capable than the man who never dared enough to lose at all. And there is a strange freedom in this. The man who has accepted that loss is simply the cost of the game stops bracing against it. He no longer needs every venture to succeed because he knows the losing ones are still paying him in lessons. He plays a longer, calmer game than the frightened man could ever play, and he wins more precisely because he has stopped being terrified of the losses that winning requires. But beneath even this lies one final root of the fear, the deepest one of all. The reason a lost coin can feel like a small death, and until a man cuts that root, the fear will always find its way back. The boy had climbed every step, and still he sensed something underneath them all. A final root from which the fear kept regrowing, no matter how many times it was cut above the surface. And when he finally saw it, it was the simplest and the deepest truth of all. Men fear losing money so terribly because, somewhere beneath their thinking, they have confused the money with themselves. They have quietly come to believe that the coins are not merely something they have, but something they are, that their worth as a man, their safety in the world, their very place in existence, is stored inside that pile. And so, when the pile is threatened, it does not feel like losing a possession. It feels like being erased. Losing money feels like a small death because a man has secretly staked his identity on the money, and to lose it is to lose himself. The boy watched this in the wealthy men who could not sleep. Their terror made no sense until he understood it this way. They were not afraid of being poor. They were afraid of being nothing. They had built their entire sense of who they were on top of a number, and a number can fall. A man standing on that foundation will fear every tremor, because every tremor threatens not his comfort, but his existence. And here the boy found the final freedom, the one that cuts the root for good. You are not your money. The coins are a tool you use, not the substance of who you are. Your true wealth, the part that no loss can ever reach, is not in the pile at all. It is in what you know, what you can do, the value you are able to create, the trust you have earned, the mind that built the fortune in the first place. Take everything from such a man, and you have not taken him. He still holds the engine that produced it all safely behind his own eyes. And a man who knows he can rebuild does not fear the fall, because for him, a loss of money is never a loss of self. It is only a temporary loss of the tool, and he knows perfectly well how to forge another. This is the man who has finally stopped fearing loss, not because he is reckless, and not because he never loses, but because he has separated his identity from his coins, built a foundation nothing can wholly destroy, and learned to treat each loss as tuition rather than judgment. The fear reaches for him and finds nothing to grip, because he has quietly removed every handle it once used. So here is the whole of it, the way the boy came to understand it. Understand that the fear is an old instinct aimed at the wrong danger, and a rope you hand to others. Expose its 3 lies and question it until it deflates. Build a foundation so that no single loss can destroy you. Reframe loss as the price of the game and the cost of learning. And beneath it all, know that you are not your money, that the true wealth is the man, not the pile, and the man cannot be taken in any fall. Do these things, and you will never fear losing money again. Not because you have promised never to lose, but because losing has lost its power to rule you. Most people will spend their whole lives ruled by that fear, guarding their pile and calling it caution. A few will cut the rope tonight. The boy could not tell you which you will be. Only the fear you refuse to obey can. If you intend to be one of the few, then follow this boy. Because every fable here teaches the one thing no one else will, how the world of money actually works. The next lesson is already waiting.